Америк их сургуулийн гадаад бодлого дэлхийн аюулгүй байдлын цэнхмийн профессор 2012-оос 2015 оны хооронд Монгол улс дахь Америк нэгдсэн улсын элчин сайдаар ажиллаж байсан Пайпер Кэмпбелл эрхэмтэй холбогдоод энэ өглөөс ярилцахад бэлэн болсон байна. Good morning, Madam Ambassador.
Good morning, and Sambano.
Sambano. As we all know, you were working as an ambassador in a period of President Barack Obama from 2012 to 2015. So the first question is, during your tenure as a U.S. ambassador to Mongolia, what aspects of the country and its people have left the strongest impression on you?
Oh my gosh, well, certainly the people more than anything. And I often say that there's not that many exotic places still left in the world, but Mongolia is one of them. It is so beautiful. Its culture is so unique. Foods that I love, like buz, which we always make sure to have each year on Tsagansar. And so many things that I remember quite fondly about Mongolia. Also, something else that I remember so strongly is the way that, for me as an American, I felt sort of an immediate affinity with Mongolians. I think Americans and Mongolians have many of the same personal characteristics, frankness, of true belief in democracy, sort of a passionate personalities.
Mm-hmm. So the next question is actually related with how do you assess the evolving U.S. role as a third neighbor for Mongolia amid the shifting geopolitical landscape? And in particular, do you still see United States as a viable, available, and dependable third neighbor for Mongolia today?
The United States is indeed still a valuable and reliable third neighbor for Mongolia. I know these are tough times. When I left the Foreign Service, I became an academic. I'm now chair of the Department of Foreign Policy and Global Security at American University. I spend my time as an academic thinking specifically about this question. How do countries in East Asia deal with this growing US-China competition? And how do countries understand the actions of this administration? And one of the nice things about being out of government is that I don't have to defend the administration all the time. When I think this administration's doing things which are contrary to its interests, I'm free to say that. And I do think that there are some steps that this administration is taking which are confusing, which are upsetting and concerning to allies. But at the same time, the depth of the U.S. relationship with Mongolia remains strong. All the reasons that the United States has wanted over time to be a third neighbor for Mongolia, those continue. And the reasons that it's strategically interesting and important for Mongolia to have third neighbors, to make sure that in addition to strong relations with China and Russia, Mongolia is interacting and has security, political and economic connections with the United States, Japan, Australia, so many other countries. Those reasons are perhaps even stronger now than 10 years ago when I was there.
Mm-hmm. So recent days, actually, the situation of geopolitical issues is very unpredictable. So given recent developments in the geopolitical environment, does the United States still hold the view that Mongolia has a strategic importance as a democratic nation situated between two major powers?
Yes, absolutely. It's clear from both statements and actions of this administration that they still hold that position.
Mm-hmm. The next question is actually, we just recently received the information that the U.S. has paused immigrant visa processing for citizens of 75 countries. It's actually also including Mongolia. So how do you see this affecting Mongolia-U.S., especially people-to-people ties?
Mm-hmm. And this pause, excuse me, this pause in immigrant visas is surprising. It's, for me, disappointing. It's confusing because, as you said, there are 75 countries that are impacted. That's 38% of all the countries in the world. It is a pause. It is not a freeze. It may be worth stepping back just a moment and recalling that earlier in mid-December, December 16th, 2025, the United States actually took an action prohibiting a specific kind of immigrant visa being applied to 39 countries. And Mongolia was not part of that initial action. So the stronger prohibition against 39 countries did not include Mongolia. But we saw that first action in December 16th, 2025, coupled then with this further action on January 14th, where, as you said, the United States paused immigrant visa processing for 75 countries. We know it's a pause. We know that the reason that President Trump has given for asking the State Department to put this pause into effect is that he is concerned about people immigrating to the United States and taking advantage of US social systems, including welfare and things like that. Mm-hmm. I think this is a mistake, including because we know that immigrants, in fact, use some of these systems, Social Security, welfare, etc., at lower rates than people born in the United States. And so the concern seems misplaced. The solution seems misplaced. But I would want to stress that this is broad. It's not applied only to Mongolia. It doesn't signal any sort of mistakes in terms of Mongolia's foreign policy towards the United States. And I do also believe that it's temporary from things that I know that the administration has said. My understanding is that they're reviewing and seeking to improve some of the systems in place. I would also note that, in fact, it has always been a requirement that foreigners immigrating to the United States are able to show that they're not going to be a burden on US systems. That's always been in the law. It hasn't been perhaps consistently or thoroughly implemented. And so, on some small way, to give him a little bit of credit, I would say that it's not unreasonable for President Trump to ask the State Department to be sure that they're actually able to implement what is in the US law.
Mm. As a former ambassador, which is working in Mongolia, I would like to ask and know about how do you evaluating a current situation in Mongolia, especially relating with the democratic issues and economy?
I had the wonderful opportunity to return to Mongolia last summer. So it was my first time to be back since I'd been there 10 years ago. And it was interesting both to see what has changed in Mongolia over that time, tremendous progress. The traffic got worse, which was shocking. I didn't think that was possible.
It is one of our headache.
But it was wonderful to see the advancements. At the same time, I am watching Mongolia's democratic, the evolution of Mongolia's democracy. It seems that there's sometimes steps forward and steps to the side. It can be confusing. I always enjoyed when I was in Mongolia, one of the pleasures of being at the U.S. Embassy was we were kind of dug into politics. We understood the personalities, we understood the dynamics of the parties and the different schisms within the parties, and we could then explain those to Washington. Now that I'm not in Mongolia, I don't understand quite as clearly, and so sometimes some of the dynamics of shifts of people and shifts what seem like shifts in position of the parties can be somewhat confusing. I believe in Mongolia, and I believe the people of Mongolia will keep the parties honest and will keep Mongolia moving forward in its democracy. But I can also see that that's not a straightforward progress.
Mm. As an expert, how do you see and evaluate the current unpredictable situation in international geopolitical issues?
A lot of people are talking about the end of the liberal international order, right? And also talking about how the idea that the systems and the presumptions that were put in place at the end of World War II, that those institutions and those presumptions are not as durable today as they were. I am an optimist. I think that there are a number of important and positive evolutions that we're seeing. But at the same time, I think that the unipolar moment when the United States was the only power or the primary power and was really both setting the stage and setting the rules, that I do think that moment is past. And so we are in a moment of tremendous flux, including as we watch the US-China relationship and the balance of power between those two countries.
So the last question is related with that. Looking ahead, what opportunities do you see for deepening cooperation between the United States and Mongolia? And which areas of partnership do you find most promising?
Well, I'm looking forward next time I come to Mongolia to flying on the direct flight between Mongolia and the United States. I think it's wonderful that air traffic connections between the United States and Mongolia have increased that way. I believe that Mongolia's critical minerals, its copper, its gold, its resources, will continue to interest international companies and continue to be an area of focus in the US-Mongolian relationship. But more than anything, something that you mentioned earlier, the people-to-people ties is what gives me confidence in the strength of the US-Mongolia special relationship. And it's because of those people-to-people ties that I am disappointed and concerned about the pause in immigrant visas. At the same time, I would stress tourist visas are still being issued, student visas are still being issued. I have had 2 wonderful Mongolian students in my classes. And so I do believe there's so many ways to continue and grow and expand the people-to-people ties between the United States and Mongolia.
So one last additional question is actually related with that. A few years ago, we had a strategic partnership, especially with the U.S. And this means Mongolia, we have only a few countries in a full frame of strategic partnership. So in coming years, as an expert, what would you say to us what we can expect from the strategic partnership and frame of that agreement between U.S. and Mongolia, especially in the economic sector?
I would expect especially a continued defense cooperation. The defense cooperation between the United States and Mongolia is robust and impressive. And I know from speaking even recently to people at our newly renamed Department of War, that there is people continue to be impressed by the quality of Mongolian U.S. military cooperation, security cooperation. On the economic side, critical minerals, copper, gold, and I think increasing opportunities for commercial connections, including I'm happy to understand that there are additional Mongolian cashmere producers who are penetrating the U.S. market. I would love to see more connections between small and medium-sized Mongolian businesses and U.S. businesses. I think that's a stretch because Mongolia and the United States just physically are so far apart, but I hope that through organizations like the American Chamber of Commerce, I hope that those connections can be strengthened and grown. And then on top of that, on top of the economic, on top of the critical mineral, on top of the security, there is a strong political interest in the United States in working with and supporting Mongolia. And I'm absolutely confident that will continue.
Madam Ambassador, thank you very much for your time and best of luck.
Bye. баярлалаа. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Бид Америк их сургуулийн гадаад бодлого дэлхийн аюулгүй байдлын цэнхүүгийн профессор Пайпер Кэмпбеллтэй ярилцлаа.